How you guys doing? Welcome back into Rover Sports, the show. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me. Gonna do a little bit of like a 30-minute, maybe 45-minute to an hour podcast. It's pretty much gonna be me on here sharing my thoughts about a whole range of topics. I went to the Orange Bowl in Florida, back in the cold Northeast right now. Oklahoma student section for the Orange Bowl. The stadium, Hard Rock Stadium down there in Miami, is decent. It's pretty easy to get into. The parking lot is just patches of grass. It's very flat. The concessions are nothing to write home about. The stadium itself, the seats are fine. It's very metal, very concrete kind of stadium. No real bells and whistles. Giant Stadium has a lot more better concessions. The Eagles stands are more, compact. But it's a decent place to go, and if you're a road team, it's great getting in. The fact is, the parking lot's great because you don't have to wait online to get into the stadium very long, and that could be a pet peeve for a lot of people. But about the football game, I kind of like Nick Saban, kind of like Alabama. I like their fans a whole lot. Decent people, really good people. I like Tennessee football fans a lot because they've had to deal with a lot of turmoil. They're a very passionate fan base. They care so much about their football team. They're very excited people. They get excited about football, and that's what I love. I love passionate, excited fans. The Georgia fans are a little arrogant. They always kind of sniff their nose or their finger at Tennessee. And, Uncle Lou's a great Georgia fan. So many other people are great Georgia fans as well. The fact is, I look at, I watched the football game, and the Alabama Crimson Tide, the reason that they won the game is because it's all about the trenches. Oklahoma was able to claw back into that game. They were down 11 after Kyler Murray threw that long touchdown pass. Kyler Murray played with all he could. He didn't have a running game. Trey Sermon couldn't run the ball. Oklahoma couldn't push Alabama. And that's how the game went. Because in the first half, when you go 3 and out, Oklahoma's defense as well, they couldn't stop the running game. They couldn't stop Joshua Jacobs. And that's why they lost the game. And then with Tua, they couldn't guard man-to-man. Tua would kill them with slants. And they couldn't force Tua to throw deep balls down the field, and that's what Clemson has to do. Clemson has to stop the run, has to blitz Tua Tagovailoa, and then you have to force them to hit double moves on Clemson's defenders, and Tua's going to have to win a game. That's why Clemson has a great chance, because Clemson has the guys in the middle of the field that can clog up Alabama, and then they also have Trevor Lawrence, a really good quarterback, that is going to be able to throw the ball a little bit on Alabama's defense. Now, with that being said, Deontay Thompson is a really good player. He's a great safety, great secondary player, and he's a good player for Alabama. Same with Quinnen Williams. Both of those guys are good players for Alabama. Now, the fact is about the football game is that Oklahoma, they just don't have the guys up front. They don't have the guys in the defensive backfield. Bob Diaco, I don't know why Oklahoma would rehire him. He was terrible at Connecticut. Nebraska's defense was a complete joke. He makes tackling out to be like the most complicated thing in the world. He can't communicate whatsoever. He's a terrible defensive coach. And Oklahoma had no creative blitz ideas. And Lincoln Riley, he kind of is just an offensive guy. And that's perfectly fine. But I'm telling you, they need some defensive linemen to stuff up the running game, because it was so frustrating in the third quarter how Alabama just continued to run the ball at Oklahoma, and they were able to chew up clock, and then Tua was able to, hit guys in the middle of the field. And the fact is, Tua played very well, but if you put Tua on Oklahoma, I don't think Oklahoma would win the game over Kyler Murray. I think Tua's an exceptional quarterback. I think he's one of the great ones of all time. And seeing him live, this is why I think Tua is so special, because he has the quickest release I've ever seen live. Like, he gets the ball out so quickly, he's never going to get sacked. He also processes extremely quickly. He's very competitive, very precise. He's a perfectionist in every sense of the word. Calm demeanor. He also showed in that game that he can hit throws down the field, so he can make those big level throws, and he plays with an urgency that's great for the position where he's looking to attack, and he attacks relentlessly. He doesn't just accept the checkdowns. So, Tua's a special player. I think Alabama's going to win the national championship. I think it's going to be a close game. I think Lawrence is going to play well. But I think Alabama's defense can hold Clemson. I think Alabama can win like 31-21 in a great competitive game in Santa Clara. But Oklahoma they don't have guys in the middle of their defense. They don't have guys that can clog up the running game. And they don't have guys to make explosive plays, and they can't get a 3 and out. They can't put 3 defensive plays together, and Alabama's just able to stall out the clock late in the game. And that's how you end up winning football games. That's what Texas did to Georgia. Texas was able to go on that 8-minute drill in the fourth quarter down the stretch with big 3rd and 3 completions. And Georgia, they were busy running their mouth on Twitter before the game about how they should have been in the playoff, but Georgia lost 2 games. And you can't just go off of what Vegas said, because then you'd have Ohio State and Georgia. Then the games are deemed meaningless. You got to have games. You got to reward the most deserving teams of the college football season. And even though Notre Dame lost to Clemson, which, again, Clemson's spectacular, even though Notre Dame is probably not as good as Georgia or Ohio State, Notre Dame didn't mess up this year. They didn't lose games. And sometimes you're not going to have the best 4 teams in the college football playoff. And that's what makes sports great, because you shouldn't have the best team always win a championship. I know, being a Giants fan, that the New York Giants winning a Super Bowl was a special time. It was the greatest upset in the history of sports, the Giants winning. And that's what made that game so special. So you don't have to have the best 4 teams in the championship. Loyola of Chicago last year, some of my favorite teams that go in the March Madness and blow things up in the tournament, are Cinderella sleeper teams. And I don't like just the blue bloods battling it out. I like there to be real underdogs. If Georgetown and Villanova in 1985 played the game 10 overtimes, Georgetown and Patrick Ewing would win. But that's what makes sports so great, and Notre Dame deserved it. If we would put in the 4 best teams, then teams like UCF and then you never would have underdogs making it in the end of the season. Hold on, I gotta get something for a second. I gotta take care of something. I'm gonna be back literally in 1 moment. All right, guys, thank you. Don't feel like reshuffling up the video. So now I'm back. Let's talk about Dave Gettleman in the press conference right now. So with Dave Gettleman, what I listened to in the press conference was Dave Gettleman said basically that he wants players that that don't want to lose football games. Obviously, he wants to take players in the draft that will not just go down and that hate losing football games. Okay, and that means what I read from that is that he might not like Drew Lock, because the one thing about Drew Lock is he's too apathetic when it comes to actually winning football games. He wants to throw well, he wants to lead, but does it bother him to lose games? I see it with Josh Allen, I see it certainly with Baker Mayfield, I see it with dog mentality guys, foxhole guys, that you want them in your foxhole and they just can't stand losing. And Dwayne Haskins has that ability over Drew Lock. Drew Lock went into the Alabama game, he went into the Georgia game, and he lays eggs in big games all the time, and it just doesn't seem to bother him that much when he does it. He doesn't bring that passion. He doesn't rise to the occasion for the big game. And he might be a good regular season quarterback, but he could be a Matthew Stafford. And that's a reason why I think now that I evaluated Drew Lock throughout the season. Drew Lock's a great talent, but his personality is not up to the task where I think he's going to be the Giants quarterback. I think he's going to end up going to a smaller market like Denver. I think he could end up going to Jacksonville. I think Dwayne Haskins is more of a big city guy, more of an Ohio State guy. I know Ohio State quarterbacks haven't been good in the NFL, but Dwayne Haskins kind of has that ability that Gettleman likes. I think he'll get along with Saquon Barkley. I think he can handle the criticism from Odell Beckham. I think Drew Lock would cave under those scenarios. I really do. I think he would mind that a lot. He's kind of more of an aloof personality. But the thing I do like Drew Lock as a player, it's just that does he hate losing? Is he a guy that loves the game of football? I think he loves football. But is he a guy that, again, is going to will his team? Is he going to make everybody in that building better? He was a part of some losing teams. In Baker Mayfield, he made everybody on the Browns a better player. Deshaun Watson elevates an entire franchise. Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Drew Brees certainly takes New Orleans Saints players and he elevates and raises the bar for everybody in that organization. And I don't think Drew Lock's going to be the type of guy to do that. I just don't. Deshaun Watson was able to do that throughout his whole career, and it's important. It's an important intangible statistic that you have to take note of. Now, Patrick Mahomes is also a nice kid. Maybe the Giants fall in love with Drew Lock, but the fact is Drew Lock was willing to go in and he was willing to lose some of those football games, and I didn't like that at all from Drew Lock. So. The fact is, I look at Haskins, I look at Drew Lock. I'm gonna sign on the side of Haskins. He's a better fit for the New York Giants than Drew Lock, and I'm fine with that being the case. So, I look at Dave Gettleman, and that presser had some interesting qualities to it. First off, Dave Gettleman loves Pat Shurmur. We knew that. He's not gonna, cave on his head football coach. But, the fact is about Gettleman's presser is he said the Giants got better. He also says that the Giants need hog mollies, but this was a very important thing that Gettleman said during his press conference. He said that the Giants are not going to overreach on a player. So if Haskins or Locke doesn't fit their satisfaction, the Giants are going to simply ignore the quarterbacking position. They might even put Kyle Lauletta in next year over Eli Manning. Eli Manning might retire or he might come back. But the Giants, they don't draft on positional need. That's what Dave Gettleman said. And to tell you the truth, I don't know if I agree with that sentiment, because then the Giants are never really going to have a good quarterback if we're constantly going to be taking the best player available. We're going to be taking defensive players. We're going to be taking offensive linemen. But eventually we're going to have to settle into a pretty good quarterback situation. And I disagree with some of my friends or some people on YouTube that say that Teddy Bridgewater should come in here or Nick Foles and we'll be just fine with a free agent quarterback. I want there to be a pretty damn good quarterback in the room. Better than a Bridgewater who got lit up by Kyle Allen and it lost his only game to a third-string quarterback in a banged-up Panther team. The thing is about Teddy Bridgewater is I think we're going to go the free agent route. Listening to Dave Gettleman, I think we're probably going to be taking an offensive lineman in the draft. We're definitely not taking Drew Lock probably, because Drew Lock is the type of guy that Gettleman won't draft, because I don't know if Drew Lock, I don't know if he hates losing. I don't know if he's devastated when he loses. He does have that Jay Cutler syndrome, that Derek Carr syndrome, that happy-go-lucky sort of guy, and that's not going to fly in New York. People are going to get tired of his act. New York's a very impatient place for a guy like Drew Lock, and I think that Dwayne Haskins understands New York, understands what being in the spotlight is all about, and I don't know if Drew Lock's going to enjoy that. I think Drew Lock would enjoy Denver. I think he would enjoy Jacksonville a lot more than the New York Giants situation. So that's kind of what I took from Dave Gettleman's press conference. Is really he might just go with the best player available. He says he never wants to reach and get a positional player. He's not sold on Eli Manning. He said he wouldn't trade Odell Beckham, but you're not going to ever say that you want to trade a guy. And then he said all options are possible with other players. And the reason Dave Gettleman is not going to say that Odell Beckham is not, the reason Dave Gettleman is going to say that Odell Beckham is not getting traded is because if you make Odell Beckham a trade, like if you make Odell Beckham, and you admit that you're going to trade Odell Beckham, or you say all options are possible, Odell Beckham gets really nervous. He goes off on social media just like Antonio Brown, and suddenly his value is a lot lower. The fact that Gettleman is all in on Beckham, it sends the message to other teams proposing trades that you're going to have to propose an exceptional deal for us to even consider trading that piece. And it's a very smart business decision by Dave Gettleman. The fact is, he defended the players. He defended Pat Shurmur. He commented how the team, practiced unbelievably in their bye week, after the 1-7 start, and how Pat kept the locker room together. My favorite thing that DG said also was Dave also said that he said that the locker room is in a much better place than last year. That last year there were a lot of chemistry issues, and they're only bringing in people to the Giants that are great, exceptional people off the field and that are true professionals. And as a Giants fan, that definitely is music to my ears with how that team with Eli Apple and the Jerry Reese players like Eric Flowers, how that team would tank and would quit on a season. So, Dave Gettleman talked about reshuffling the offensive line. He talked about Jamon Brown being in there. He talked about how we got to have layers of good offensive linemen to end up competing. It was an entertaining press conference. He's fantastic with the media, and overall very, very exciting. I don't know, Dave Gettleman said that, he's alluding to the fact that Eli Manning is probably not going to be back next year. And I'm almost tired of talking about the quarterback situation. And I was disappointed, on Sunday when the Giants lost to the Cowboys, and, the fact that Dak hit that throw on 4th and 15, and I wanted Eli Manning to end up winning that game, and if it would have been his last game, it would be a tough pill to swallow, that being another losing season of 5-11 for Eli Manning, and kind of having the back end of his career, as he said in his own words, be like two separate careers. So, the fact is with Eli Manning, the fact is with him is that, I'm disappointed that Eli Manning is going to have to retire pretty soon. I got to, again, get this sound figured out. And I got to close the freaking door. Can you move to another spot? Shut the damn door. I shut it. Back to the podcast on Dave Gettleman and Eli. So, Dave Gettleman says you have to make difficult decisions. You know what that means? That means that Eli Manning is probably gone. He said you have to make decisions. You can't let your feelings get involved in the decisions that you make. You have to make what's best for the franchise. Can't be emotional. So that means that he's leaning towards Eli doesn't have the arm strength anymore or the speed to play with this team. That the Giants are either going with Lauletta, a free agent quarterback, or a quarterback that we're going to select in the draft. I think that Dave Gettleman could fall in love with the tools of Daniel Jones from Duke. I could see us taking him in the second round possibly. I think we might roll with another David Cutcliffe guy. Now, could Daniel Duke do tremendous at the or Daniel Jones? I didn't mean to say Daniel Duke, but could Daniel Jones be very successful at the NFL Combine, and can he move into Gettleman's wheelhouse for us to possibly get a quarterback? I think that is very possible. I look right now at at the guys that we at the fan base, the pulse of the fans want Dwayne Haskins, the Ohio State quarterback, and I'm ready to admit that that's the right decision. I was a guy that liked Drew Lock's skill set a lot. I still do. His personality, though, the way that he hasn't played big against great competition, the fan base will be very skeptical. He seems content or okay with losing as long as he prepares for football games, where Dwayne Haskins is a guy that can elevate an entire culture around him. And for that reason, for the personality reasons alone, I'm going to take Dwayne Haskins over Drew Lock's personality. And I'm probably going to make a whole video assessing their personalities. I might even do that tonight. But I feel like Dwayne Haskins is a quarterback that New York is going to rally behind. He's a guy that grew up loving the New York Giants, and he's a better cultural fit. Saquon Barkley and Dwayne Haskins are going to be very close. I think that they're going to be really good representatives of our team going forward. Great leadership, great camaraderie with those two guys. And I would certainly love it. If Josh Allen happens to slip down to the 6th possible selection, I would love Josh Allen. I think that I think that, you know, the player Quinnen Williams is a big-time player on the defensive line. That is a big-time player, and I think the Giants could be interested in him. I think Jonah Williams is going to be a guy that the Giants are going to snap at if the Giants get an opportunity to select Jonah Williams. So there's a lot of good players that the Giants are going to be enamored with. I think Jonah Williams is going to be one of those guys. And if they don't take Dwayne Haskins, I could see the Giants just trotting out Lauletta and possibly just giving him an opportunity, or possibly bringing in a free agent quarterback than in the offseason. The cool news about if you bring in a rookie quarterback and Eli is off the team is that you're going to have $17 million freed up in cap. So those $17 million are then going to go to, I guess for this season, those $17 million are then going to go to pretty good players that you can bring in for $5-7 million. You could try to get another linebacker. You could try to acquire about a safety. I like Roger Saffold from the LA Rams. It's a really athletic guard that I think is a really, really talented player in free agency. You could try to get offensive linemen for that price, and you could bring in a lot of different guys. So if I were the Giants on the clock, the 6th pick comes around, I would take Dwayne Haskins, and I would feel pretty comfortable about doing it. I waver and think, is Dwayne Haskins going to struggle versus pressure? Is he going to get sacked? Is he another Cardale Jones? Is he a Troy Smith? Is he a guy that's another Ohio State quarterback like a J.T. Barrett? Except J.T. Barrett really had terrible arm strength, and Cardale Jones was inconsistent in his time in Columbus. Dwayne Haskins has done it for a long, long time. And that's the thing about Dwayne Haskins. Cardale Jones did it for 3 games. Dwayne Haskins was able to carry it out through 12 football games. So that's kind of how I evaluate Dwayne Haskins. Let's talk a little bit about the coaching carousel here for about 20 minutes. Again, I want to tell you guys, I wanted to say thank you guys for listening in to my show. To this talking edition of Rover Sports. It's a Rover Sports rant. I talked about how Oklahoma didn't have the down linemen inside. They couldn't stop the run of Alabama, and how it's going to be multiple recruiting cycles of defensive talent until Oklahoma can compete, and they're also going to have to hire a great defensive coordinator. You know, the University of Texas, they have really good offensive linemen. Tom Herman brings in top 10 recruiting classes every single year. The defensive line is very healthy, and they were able to stop the run. And Todd Orlando is an unbelievable defensive play caller, and he's an unbelievable defensive coordinator. So Texas should be able to leapfrog Oklahoma. Now, Texas's defense was terrible against Oklahoma, and Kyler Murray is an elite-level quarterback. I think Spencer Rattler next year is going to be super for the Sooners. I think he could win a Heisman Trophy during his time in Norman. I don't think it's going to be 3 in a row. But the fact is, you know, Texas, maybe they'll be able to slam the ball, control the game like the first time they played. And Sam Ehlinger is a tough quarterback in Texas. They really don't care that much about arm strength down the field. They want accurate, quick decision makers that are also able to run the ball. And that's kind of what Casey Thompson and Sam Ehlinger kind of represent for that team. Now, maybe Cameron Rising is a different type of quarterback, but he's also a dual threat. So they love being able to have a running quarterback in that system. That's what Tom Herman actually likes. He doesn't really like the pocket passers. So very interesting times. Now, Michigan has Cade McNamara. Urban Meyer left the Big Ten. Jim Harbaugh, for his team to compete with the SEC and be elite, and to make Paul Feinbaum eat his words, they're going to have to recruit really athletic skill position players along with their defensive line, and Jim Harbaugh should reinvent himself and his offense to be more of an explosive downfield passing game. Instead of just smashing the ball up the gut running the football, Jim Harbaugh should get more exotic like he was in San Francisco and should actually open himself up to taking in other ideas that might be a little bit different than the things that he already does. Meaning that Jim Harbaugh should look towards Chip Kelly. Jim Harbaugh should look towards Scott Frost. He should look towards other coaches in college football for his offense to continue to be developed more so than it actually is right now. Let's talk about news in the coaching world. I liked every move that each individual team made. Maybe Carolina could have fired Ron Rivera. I would have actually looked to make that decision. Now, Ron Rivera is going to be calling plays defensively, so that is going to be good for the Carolina Panthers going forward. But the thing is it's not only about Ron Rivera. The thing is with addressing the coaching movement. Dirk Cutter was not a great leader. Jameis Winston in that defense was atrocious, so Dirk Cutter had no idea how to coach the corners or how to stop the passing game. Now, Todd Monken is going away from Tampa Bay, but Tampa Bay's had a good passing game, but they've been in void of a good coach for a long time. That's why I think their top target should be Chris Richard. I think Richard will get along with Jameis Winston. I think the cornerback play will get a lot better. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they like fiery coaches. They take chances on guys, whether that was John Gruden, Greg Schiano. I think Tampa Bay is a franchise that needs to become relevant again, needs to be hosting playoff football games again, and that's why I think Chris Richard would be absolutely excellent for the position, and that's exactly what they need is a defensive style head coach. That's why with the New York Jets, Chris Richard is going to have a very good interview up there. He's going to blow them away, but Tampa Bay is going to get to Richard sooner rather than later. I look at the Miami Dolphins. I think the Dolphins could be in demand for Richard and his personality in Miami. However, for Chris, I think that Tampa is a perfect place for him. I think it's a great style of life. I think the Bucs, the NFC South, you already have Dan Quinn, so you already will be familiar with the cover 3 that the Seattle Seahawks run. You have a failing franchise so far in Carolina with Ron Rivera currently right now. I think that Tampa can leapfrog Carolina. I think that they can leapfrog the Falcons, and then the Saints are going to dip down. When you look at the AFC East, being Miami in that hard rock place, not as tight of a fan base, not as passionate of a fan base as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans are actually going to be, I think that Chris Richard is going to like Tampa Bay a whole lot more than Miami. For Miami, we have to figure out a head coach for them. I can see Miami going in the route of maybe a veteran coordinator. So I look at what they're going to be doing there in Miami, and I can see the Miami Dolphins kind of hiring a veteran as a coordinator, maybe a veteran coach like a Jim Caldwell. I could see them hiring. They had Adam Gase, who's an offensive mind. They're not going to want to take their chance with that. Maybe Vic Fangio, maybe Matty Eberflus, maybe a defensive coordinator guy. Somebody that's a pretty dry hire. It's not going to be exciting. And, again, I don't really like the Miami Dolphins, but we'll have to see what Miami decides to do. But again, maybe Miami will hire me, and maybe I'll have to then work for the Miami Dolphins in that situation. The fact is, as we look at different situations here with the coaching situations, we have the New York Jets as an opening. And the New York Jets, we have Cliff Kingsbury is one of the guys that is looking at the New York Jets. Now, I think that would be an interesting hire for the Jets because he's a young, offensive-minded coach. They are not going to hire a defensive-minded coach because in every single press conference that you listen to Chris Johnson, that you listen to the general manager of the Jets, which is Mike Maccagnan. What Mike Maccagnan says is that we need to build a team around the young quarterback. So that means that Cliff Kingsbury is going to actually have a really good opportunity to be the head coach there. They are going to be interviewing Zach Taylor over there. I don't think Gase is going to fit. I think they're just bringing in Gase to get intel on the Miami Dolphins and how they're able to scheme up the Jets. It's usually what happens in these coaching searches. So, I look at the Jets. I think Cliff would be a great hire. I wouldn't like Mike McCarthy, but I could see McCarthy really getting along with Maccagnan, really getting along with Christopher Johnson. But I think Chris Johnson is going to lean towards a younger head coach, which is what the Jets should do. I would look at Taylor or I would look at Cliff as the head coaching options. They're not interviewing LaFleur. So it's going to come down to, I think, McCarthy, Zach Taylor, and Cliff Kingsbury. I would be surprised if the Jets hired Cliff. I could see them hiring Zach Taylor from the Rams. I could see that being a hire, or a Mike McCarthy boring Browns hire. Now, I could see the Browns hiring Mike McCarthy. It'd be interesting if Freddie Kitchens was given the head coaching job and then they went out and find a defensive coordinator. I don't think that would be the worst idea ever. I think Chris Richard is not interviewing with the Cleveland Browns, but I would not want Mike McCarthy up there. I don't like Mike McCarthy as a coaching candidate really at all. So it's going to be interesting to see, what it's going to be interesting to see what the Jets do with their decision. The Broncos are going to bring in an old school guy. If I were the Broncos, I'd look at Zach Taylor or LaFleur. I think the Cardinals are conducting a brilliant search again. I was higher on Steve Wilkes, but now they're going to be bringing in Zach Taylor and LaFleur and Cliff Kingsbury to build around Josh Rosen. I don't think Cliff is going to get along with Rosen. I think that Matt LaFleur would be a really good, would be a pretty good hire for the Arizona Cardinals, or Zach Taylor. So I think Zach Taylor could end up going to Arizona. I think the Jets could be one of the last teams to make their decision. I think it's going to be between Cliff and Mike McCarthy. And if the Browns don't sign McCarthy, then McCarthy's going to go to the New York Jets, which would be a huge failure. I think Cliff is kind of a risky hire. If I were the Jets, honestly, where I would look, I would honestly bring in Shane Waldron. I think Shane Waldron could potentially be brilliant. I would look at, I would definitely have Zach Taylor hired in Cliff Kingsbury because Taylor's been in the NFL before. So Zach and Press Taylor are going to be really high on the list of guys. Shane Waldron is a guy that you should certainly bring in an interview, get him around, and see if he's a good guy or not. So I think that Zach Taylor is going to be a guy with Shane Waldron that should be in the job. I think Cliff should be maybe further on that list. And I think Cliff won't be that bad of a hire. The players already love him. But the thing is, he's failed at Texas Tech. He doesn't have good defenses. He hasn't coached in the NFL in a long, long time. So that's why Zach Taylor has a real possibility of being the head coach of the Jets, and it's not going to be LaFleur. So it could be Zach Taylor. I'm trying to think of what other names that I mentioned for the New York Jets offering. I don't think they're going to go for Chard. They're not going to go with that defensive mind. They're going to entertain the hire, but they're not going to pull the trigger. And I know Richard is going to kill it, but he's going to end up either in Tampa or he's going to end up in Miami. My guess is Tampa Bay, and I actually like that. If I were Miami, I would hire Richard also. If I were putting myself in the Dolphins' shoes, I would try to get Richard as soon as possible. I think he's a gem in coaching. He's an unbelievable teacher of the position. I'm going to show you guys some mic'd up of Chris Richard. It's going to blow your minds. It's going to be unbelievable. But the fact is, the New York Jets, I would not hire Jim Harbaugh right now. I just don't know about Jim. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't really want to hire Jim Harbaugh. What's going on here? What's going on with everybody?
I was looking for his charts. He found them.
All right. Okay. I'm going to have to go and open something up as well. So just give me a moment. I'm going to be back in about a second. I want to talk about Mike Mayock. I want to talk a little bit about these playoffs. Hopefully you guys can listen to this if you're taking a ride. Maybe you'll just have this on in the background with your television sets on. I already addressed the Giants, what they're probably going to do in the NFL draft. Dave Gettleman's press conference. Eli Manning is on the outs. He's going to retire. It's sad that Eli's game had to come down like that. I hate that it happened. I hate that it went down the way it did. I would like to see him back next year, but he's just going to be too much money. And now when we get a rookie quarterback in, we're going to have to improve our roster. And we're going to have to, I'd love to cut bait with Landon and Olivier Vernon too and just open up that cap space to bring in a honey badger. And man, oh man. I'd like to bring in a great safety as well in the draft. I'd like to really go through the draft, not get caught up in a big contract for a big-time player. Would definitely have a limit with Landon Collins. I would only go about $10 million a year with him, maybe $9 million. I would not go up to 11 or 12, and he's probably going to get a $12 million a year thing from a team, and we're not going to be able to afford him, and neither should we want to afford him. So with that being said, I'm going to go out for 1 second. I'm going to address the rest of the NFL coaching rumors, the rest of the NFL hot table stuff that I'm going to be talking about. And I talked about the Jets. I talked about a lot of different teams. I'm going to talk a little bit about Denver. And we are going to discuss Arizona. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And then we're going to go out and we're going to try to predict and discuss these upcoming playoff games. And it should be great. We should try to run till about 50 minutes, maybe a 50-minute podcast episode. So appreciate you guys again hanging out, and we'll talk a little Eli Manning, and we'll talk about several other things when I get back from doing this podcast. Or I'm going to get back to doing the podcast. Thank you guys. All right, here we go. So I am currently back. Got on my Aaron Lewis shirt. And boy, oh boy, am I excited for the NFL playoffs. You know, the New York Giants are not in it. Eli Manning, his career's going to be over. It's very, very, very sad. Very sad. I released a passionate video saying to bring back Eli Manning. I would love to see Eli and Haskins on the roster together. I don't think it's going to happen. If I was in charge, I'd bring back Davis Webb all cheap. And I would have kept him all along. Because I like Davis Webb a lot. And I think Webby's going to end up going out to Denver. I heard certain things about John Gruden. That he could be an over-controlling guy. And that he's a big ego. So maybe that's just salty players that got cut from John, but who knows? But, you know, the fact is I'm excited for Webb to get his opportunity to play in the NFL. So Right now, I wanted to talk about the NFL playoffs. We got the Colts and the Texans. I think it's a great football game. It's down in Texas. I think the whole world's going to be on Indianapolis in the game. And I think the Colts are going to win the game. The Colts have a ton of momentum. Marlon Mack's a great player. Their defense is going to get after Deshaun Watson. They're going to end up winning the football game 31-24. Second game, I'm confident in the Cowboys. I'm confident that they'll be able to stuff the running game of Seattle. They'll be able to get after Russell Wilson. Their defense will play great. The Cowboys will end up winning the game about 27 to 17. I think a 10-point win for the Dallas Cowboys. Their defense is going to be great. DeMarcus Lawrence is going to get inside. Malik Collins is going to make plays. Leighton Vander Esch. Everybody's going to be in tune. The team is humming. The team's going on a perfect trajectory. And Richard is definitely going to be gone from there. Then the third game. I look at Lamar Jackson, and I think, the LA Chargers are going to have to play great on the road. Now, I don't know if the Chargers are going to play that well on the road in order to win the football game. So, I look at the LA Chargers and going to Baltimore in this game. I think that the Chargers offense is going to have a lot of trouble. I think Lamar Jackson is going to have a lot of trouble in the game as well. I think it's going to be a low-scoring football game, but I don't think the Chargers' defense is as good as the Ravens' defense, and that's why you got to go with Baltimore. I quit on Baltimore earlier in the year. They lost to Carolina. They lost to Pittsburgh. They were a crappy team earlier in the season with Joe Flacco. They got hot. They won about 3 games over terrible competition. Then they went on the road to LA. They were able to win against the Chargers. And they're really fortunate to be in these playoffs because the Browns easily could have beaten the Chargers. And if the Browns would have won that game, I think Greg Williams might have even retained the head coaching job if they would have made that statement win against the Ravens. But I think the Ravens are going to end up winning the football game. The defense is going to be too good. I'm going to say a score of about 20-14. It's going to be really ugly, really low scoring. And I think Phillip Rivers is going to be in for a terrible day against that Ravens defense. That is just really complete. You got to give John Harbaugh a ton of credit. But I think that when the Ravens go on the road to play the New England Patriots, the Patriots defense will be able to stop Lamar Jackson, and Tom Brady will be able to spread out that Ravens defense at home, and the Patriots will be able to prepare adequately well, and they'll be able to beat the Ravens pretty good, just like they were able to beat Denver with Tim Tebow. I think the Patriots will roll the Baltimore Ravens in that contest because I think Lamar Jackson under that stage, I think that it's going to be too tough of a stage for that quarterback and for that offense. I think it has an expiration date, but I think it's going to last longer than this week. Then the last game, I've wavered back and forth on this one, giving the Eagles an opportunity. I think the Bears are going to win this game. I think it's going to be about 24-16, maybe 24-13. Really ugly game. I think the defense is going to win again. You got to take defense. You got to take Eddie Jackson. You got to take that defense against Nick Foles. I don't think Foles is going to perform very well in this environment. The defense of Chicago is so salty and so damn good that I'm going to take the Bears here winning that game. All right, guys, so I switched my opinion on that. I appreciate you guys listening to the podcast. 44 minutes, just got back from a long trip. I am really excited to continue to do this podcast, and I'm going to be doing it. Let's see. I think I'm going to be doing this podcast. Next week, especially when I get back from all the playoff games. We have a lot of interesting stuff going on with the NFL playoffs right now that is really, really exciting. So looking forward to all the developments that go on with that. Alrighty, guys. We'll see you. Thanks so much.